View from the Gutters, episode 123. Welcome to View from the Gutters, the comic book podcast where each episode we discuss a collected edition, trade paperback, or graphic novel, and then recommend and vote on the book for the next episode. Warning: the discussion portion of this show has massive spoilers for that book. On this episode, we discuss Alias, and to skip ahead to the recommendation section, skip to 102.54. Hooray!
Yay. Jared's like, why do I do this with these
sometimes
people?
I just forget that it's like this. And I'm like, I'm excited to podcast. And then I get here and I'm like, why was I excited?
Oh, yeah.
Hooray. Episode 123, I'm Andrew Chard.
I'm Tobias Panchin.
I'm Kaylee Fleeman.
Brant Gillihan-Eddy.
And I'm Kid Reynolds.
Hey, everybody. How are you doing out there in podcast land?
Yeah, we don't have Joe to say something loudly and offensively.
Yeah, I feel like we're off to
kind of stir things up and get us going.
Derail us immediately. So I guess then we'll jump right into the book unexpectedly.
Let me first just
Announcements.
Thank
Yes.
our episode sponsors, Addison Appleby, Brian May, and Tony Cortero.
Yay.
Thanks, you guys.
Yes.
Now let's get to the book.
You know,
All right.
I have something to say.
Okay.
So I noticed that Addison Appleby's name was missing from an episode recently, and I was curious whether that was our error or hers.
No, that was a intentional action by me. So we have 4 episode sponsors, and I announced 3 sponsors per episode, so I've been rotating through them. So you notice that
Why don't you just say all 4?
Initials are BH, whose name I'm contractually prevented from naming on this episode, was not named because it's his week to be off because he's been named on the last 3.
I see.
Is that really how that works?
It's how I decided that it worked in my
That's a
head, and
terrible
nobody
way.
was there to contradict me.
I mean, but I'm
Well,
here
yeah,
now.
nobody
and
was
that's
there in
awful.
your head to contradict you. No, yeah, that's supposed to be.
Why don't
how
you
that
just say
works.
4 names?
Because if we get like 12 people who are episode sponsors, we
Fucking
can
all
break it
say
up.
all 12. No,
I'm
I'll
not going to say all 12
I'll
names
say
on
it.
every episode.
Please don't
I'll
say
do
all
it.
12.
I'll do it. I'll do it later. We don't have to do it now. I'll punch it in later.
All right,
It's called
you
a
do-
punch edit.
You do that.
Done.
All right.
Then that
I can't
makes.
wait till we get 100 people and so every week Jared is saying 100
Guess what? It
names.
probably won't change that much from week to week, and I'll just be able to fucking copy paste.
That's
Technology. It's important.
true. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Adam.
Just like
Addison
math.
Appleby.
yeah,
Yeah.
Old school sponsor back again.
yeah.
So let's talk about Alias.
Yeah. Brant, would you like to start?
No.
You sounded like you wanted to start.
I'll start.
No.
Did you guys know that you were allowed to curse in a comic book? Because
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
And holy cow, was I set straight by this guy.
Bang, comics aren't just for kids anymore.
So, worthy to note.
Fuck, shit, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Oh
Can
my
I
God.
can I say I really appreciated it?
Yeah.
Because she talks like how I talk.
Yeah, she talks
And
like a
it's
human being.
Yeah, and I was just
and then
like, yeah.
Thor comes in. This deity does not like your language.
So, a lot of the Max line in the early 2000s, a lot of the reason that they were like a big deal was they were the 18 plus line, but also because they got to poke fun at the Marvel Universe in a way that other books didn't get to. And moments like that where Thor, like, seems as though he can't handle bad language, which is ridiculous, is funny. And I like that. And I love explaining jokes on the show. However, no, I loved it. I mean, this is like supposed to be a real world. I mean, we talked a lot about, I talked a lot on the last episode about how Ghost Rider felt real because of the, like, Marvel touches in that universe, and how Miss Marvel felt real because of the, like, Marvelness of the universe, and how Moon Knight felt real because of it felt like a part of a Marvel universe, but it felt like part of a real world, and this feels even more realer.
It does. And, like, the whole cursing thing, I found kind of like, wow, you guys are just really overdoing it. For, like, the first, I want to say, like, 6 issues. And I'm not sure if they, like, calmed the shit down after that, or if I just got used to it, but it seemed a lot less blatant.
Yeah. I
Kinda
feel like after the first
after
arc,
a
it
few
tamped
months.
down a bit.
I mean,
you've
guys just
played
got used to it.
You've played GTA 5, though.
I have.
which is 1,000 times more offensive and like erroneous.
Yeah,
than
but
this.
I'm not used to opening up a Marvel comic book and on the first page there being 3 fucks.
Yeah,
See,
but
it felt to me like kind of like the way I feel about watching shows on HBO, where I can imagine the conversation being like, "This is pretty gritty and adult," but you know, what would make it more gritty and adult, more swearing and implied sexual content. Like,
Well,
Yeah.
it's not implied.
well, yeah,
it's graphic sexual
graphic
content in this
on the
book.
content.
that was not graphic.
Well, yeah,
and
no. I think it is implied, or
there's nothing graphic sexually.
Well, there's a couple
going
of
on.
pages where they're having buck naked ball slapping sex on the
But,
Well, but
you,
you
don't
don't see
see
their balls.
anything.
or the.
You
I mean,
see, like,
I guess the ball
faces.
slapping is implied.
You see her
You
face,
see
and it's hard to
almost
establish.
nothing.
And this is where I get into the issue about the art. It's hard to determine what exactly her face is supposed to convey about the.
Yeah.
What is it, Michael Gaydos?
Yeah, which we find out later she doesn't remember most of it anyway. So
Right. So maybe he did do accurate research into what people who are really drunk look like when they're
Yeah.
having sex. But at the time, I remember being like, "Is she enjoying,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or is she actually in pain?"
It's
And
not
That's-
terribly
this is
clear.
more than I need to know about this.
Yeah, that was kind of my issue with just the art in general, where all the faces seemed off. They seemed to just be making the wrong facial expression. Like when she's being interrogated by the cop, it looks like he's smiling the entire time. But the conversation that they're having doesn't seem like one that he would be
Or
smiling
it makes him seem
in.
like a colossally creepy prick if he is smiling.
Yeah.
It's like, are you really trying to make him seem that skeezy?
Yeah.
Like, maybe
it's-
you are, but
And
yeah,
like,
I felt like that's what that was like.
the first woman who approaches her to like find her sister, and she finds out it's a sham, but her eyes are like really wide and glossy the
Yeah.
entire time, and
Which
so
is on
she-
purpose.
Yeah,
She's also cross-eyed, which you can't accidentally do.
well, I mean, you can.
I mean,
but like, so
Not
with,
really,
with her, I was willing to buy like, okay, there's something off about this woman, and that's on purpose. But there are a couple other women in particular who look like that, who have eyes like that, where they're just really wide and glossy
Yeah,
and
it seems
slightly cross-eyed. And I don't know if it's
all
just
of them are
like,
being hit by, or about to be hit by a car.
yeah, exactly. And I just wasn't sure if maybe he didn't know how to do eye makeup and was like unsure on how to convey heavy use of eyeliner or what. Because, yeah, it was definitely throwing me off.
yeah, I think that, I mean, there's... If we've said anything about early 2000s art, is that it had issues. And I think this is a prime example of that. The heavy inks drive me insane.
Yeah.
I mean, I love modern comics. Thank you for getting rid of heavy inks. I mean,
Kinda
that
like
was
the-
such a remnant of the 90s.
And
And
see, it's interesting. Like, of all the things in the art, I actually like that the most because I felt like it was giving it like that kind of noirish vibe.
then why
I
not just
feel-
make it black and white?
Yeah, I
Well,
feel
maybe
like it
why
was,
not? But
Yeah.
I feel like it was trying to do that, but it wasn't
yeah, I mean, I'm
100% succeeding.
Yeah, I agree with that. And of course, since we're on the art, and I'll just go ahead and just dive right into this. I'm sorry. I know you have a working relationship with this guy, Michael, or Brian, Michael.
Brian
but
Michael.
Yeah.
Offsetting Gaydos' art with Begley's art is like the most atrocious thing that you could have fucking done to me. Like, that was horrible. To be
Yeah.
like, muted tones, not quite in, like, structurally questionable faces, and then like, Bright! Mark Begley!
Well,
And I was just
mean,
like,
it's
oh my God.
supposed to
that was a
be.
very intentional choice.
No,
And I kind of liked it.
I liked
showing
the
art,
the
at
juxtaposition between her like bright, shiny, happy superhero days,
yes.
with the gray, muted,
I
realistic,
understand that,
modern.
But like, I think in the same comic, a much better execution of that is who did the flashback sequence art. That's kind of done in the retro style when she's like,
oh
for the
yeah,
Secret
towards
Origin?
the very end where it's like early Spider-Man art.
yeah. So
I'm not sure off the top of
like,
my head.
I thought that was great. I felt like the palette was still bright but relatively muted. But like, if part of your whole artistic choice using someone like Gaydos and then the other artist who I don't remember is to convey either kind of like a classic sense or kind of a different than regular mainstream comic sense, to have like the guy who's doing Ultimate Spider-Man suddenly show up doing the offsings seems more like he was like, hey, I know this artist, I want to use him, not who could we get to really make an offset, like an artistic offsetting to Gaydos' art. Like it feels jarring, not in a stylistic sense. It feels jarring in a technical sense, I guess, if I can articulate that.
Yeah, I agree with you that it is. I mean, I felt this a lot reading it. There was like, I think there's a lot of good in here. I think the art is something that I'm able to nitpick more now, knowing what art can look like, because this is not the first time I've read this book. I read this in like 2007 or 2006, maybe, like right when I was getting back into comics, because I remember reading it right before I went to work at the comic book store. Because I would recommend it to people. And I had just gotten into like Powers and like all of Bendis' stuff at the time. And I was reading Avengers and all that. And it kind of started from this kind of stuff. And then I didn't see nearly the problems that I see now. And I wonder if a part of that is like, it wasn't as big of an issue back then.
Sure.
The art wasn't so great, because a lot of Marvel's art.
So I'm pretty sure that's still Michael Gaydos.
Really?
Because no one else is credited as artist on that issue.
Okay, so I did actually, that reminds me. I did look, and I was like, he's the only one credited, right? So either he's very good, or it's all about the inker.
Yeah.
Like he's either able to convey very different styles, or the inker is like totally...
There's no inker credited.
So apparently he can draw in two very distinct styles, which I mean, I'm sure many artists can.
Yeah.
Michael, do more in that classic vintage look.
I
That's
feel
sweet.
like this book was intentionally trying to look like Vertigo.
Sure.
Like it was trying to be Vertigo, and not just Vertigo, but Vertigo of the 90s, because I mean, this only came out in 2001. So that's what they were.
Right. They were trying to create
with.
an adults-oriented, gritty...
And so I think a lot of that went into how the book looks and reads.
Yeah.
Like it's half Vertigo, half Homicide: Life on the Street or whatever.
Well, I mean, it's half Vertigo in visuals mixed with Brian Michael Bendis' crime stuff, like Goldfish and Torso.
Yeah. Which is, man, this felt so different from everything else I've read by Bendis, which isn't that. It's his Ultimate Spider run and like Guardians of the Galaxy and X-Men and like all his superhero stuff.
Yeah.
Did you ever read Powers?
I have not read Powers.
Yeah, it's
it's weird how very different it feels.
Well, this is where he cut his teeth, was with crime stories.
This is what he should be doing then.
I mean,
this is phenomenally better than his superhero stuff.
I like this a lot.
Brant, you are making faces.
I think that when he moved over to Daredevil, he brought a lot of this sensibility with him to Daredevil. But I think when he went to Avengers, he dusted off like the big time superhero chops, and I think he writes a superhero story about as well as you can at Marvel.
I don't agree with that.
Man, I tell you, reading like Avengers Disassembled and Breakout was like a breath of fucking fresh air in the goddamn staleness that was Marvel superheroes.
That was huge at the time, but even his work, even moving forward with like New Avengers and stuff like that.
Yeah, I liked probably like the first 9 trades of New Avengers.
And I think that I can, at least for me, very easily, I can draw a line between and I can draw this line with Jeff Johns. So if Joe was here, we could get into an argument about that. Like, there's a difference between the technical capabilities of an individual issue versus maybe not liking where an overall plot goes. And I know that Bendis gets flack because people don't like the events that like the Skrull invasion and that stuff, and people tend not to like those.
Which may have gotten teased in this book.
Right. Very much so. But, so it's like I can appreciate the individual things about a given issue that Bendis has written that I enjoy versus some of the like overarching decisions he may have made as an architect of an arc.
And that's not really the thing that I'm concerned about as far as Bendis is concerned. My problems with him more relate around the facts, like he ignores continuity, all of his characters sound the same, and his pacing is fucking terrible. Like, I read the first, 12 or 16 issues of his Guardians of the Galaxy run, and nothing happens.
But you were reading it as it came out.
Yes.
Which is a problem with Bendis. Don't ever read Bendis as he's coming out. Like, just read the trades. He reads fantastically in the trade. He's part of the reason why they call it writing for the trade. Very significantly, the 2005s became the writing for the trade movement because of Bendis.
His current X-Men run went so slow, and so long that the covers actually got desynced from what was going on in the comic
Yeah.
because everything was taking way longer than it was supposed to.
Well, yeah, and they also make the covers 3 months ahead of time, and they have random characters on them to sell you books. Like,
Well, they're not supposed to be random. They're supposed to reflect what's going on in the book. and
Maybe.
that doesn't happen.
It doesn't-
If you're
Sometimes.
fucking behind.
Gwen Strange is on the cover of Secret Invasion 3, and she's not in that book at all.
Gwen
Or Secret
Strange.
Wars. Yeah, it's Dr. Gwen Strange. They did like a Gwen
Gweniverse.
Stacy thing. I mean, it's an alternate cover, but it's not in the book. They do that all the time.
Well, those are alternate covers.
Well, even
It doesn't matter. The cover doesn't. The
Yeah.
cover sells the book, but what's in the book
here,
isn't reflected by that.
Let me do what I always do that drives my coworker crazy. You guys are both right.
No, I mean, I know we are.
Yes, but I don't know that Toby knows that, which is why he's getting frustrated with you.
It's
I hear what you're
Bendis is the king of. I mean, reading this in singles would have been horrible.
saying. Oh my god!
Because it's
Yeah.
about like reading a complete story. Like that's a huge departure from the way they used to make comics.
Well, and there are things that he does in this book that, like, I get that they're clever, but I'm also just kind of like, oh, stop! Like the whole panel of her sitting in the exact same way at her
Oh my
chair,
God,
and the
Oh, I
person
hate that.
Sick of
expositing about like, and like I understand there's actually
I loved that.
I think it's cool, and I think it's actually supposed to be calling back to a very particular kind of what do you call that? Shit, not noir, but like detective style.
Yeah,
like
it's-
like I
that's-
think it's supposed to create that tone to a certain
Yeah.
sense. So even though it frustrated me the first time it happened, I was fine with that. But he didn't have to fucking do it again.
He did it 3 times.
I know, and I'm just like,
I loved it every
3?
time.
It felt like way more than that.
Yeah, it's 3. I'm pretty sure.
Oh my god,
It's-
that drove me up the
well,
wall.
I think
Okay. The alternative option is to have her change her facial expression in every panel, which is not what she's doing.
no.
Like the point. Okay, I think there's 2 different because I think this is something that's very important to the way that this book works. Is those scenes? It's about realism. Why would you change camera angles every time when it's one person looking at another person? It's very much supposed to be the person that's being interviewed in those longer bottom panels is what Jessica Jones sees. And so the top panels are what the other character sees. Jessica Jones does not move. It's
That-
not her job to
That's
talk.
fine. That might be realistic. That might even work on a camera.
Yeah.
But as far as comic books are concerned, it's shitty cinematography.
It's not.
It's boring
it's
to look at.
absolutely
It feels
not.
incredibly
I
static.
kind of liked it.
Read it
so
faster.
what I'm going
Like
to say
you've already
is,
you've hey Kaylee, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
You've already ingested the information in the first panel. You don't need to look at the rest of them, but they're there to imply something to you. It's important that they're there. To leave them out takes things out of the book. That's odd.
I disagree. I feel like it's a huge waste of page space.
But it's not in the place of anything. There would
but
be
other
vacuous
things would
space
be-
there
You
instead.
could put other things in there. More
No,
interesting
everything would have
things to
just
look
been
at.
bigger. Like
Kaylee, what did you want to say?
Okay, so what I wanted to say was that I appreciated what those panels were trying to do and how they forced the reader to kind of pause and pace themselves, and I really liked that. I think I would have enjoyed them more if his faces were better. Because I have a really hard time.
That's very fair.
I have a hard time looking at the facial expressions of the characters in this comic, and I find that I read it better when it's kind of zoomed out. And I like how it looks, and I like the thick lines, and I like the way people stand, and I like the way that their hair falls. But I feel like his faces are very blocky and are this weird mashup of several different art styles I just don't think mesh very well. And because of that, it's really hard to look at those panels. And so if you don't like his art style, specifically his close-ups,
yeah,
it's hard to read them because
And
they're just
most of the
distracting.
males looked like David Duchovny.
yeah, and I mean, I guess
Cage was a black David Duchovny.
I feel like while I agree with you, I feel like it's a strange argument because, and not it's not an argument, but I feel like it's a strange observation because it's like, yeah, if the art were better, the comic would be better. Like I don't, that doesn't.
Well, no, but I'm saying is like
you're
what I'm saying is
those
that
scenes would
Yeah,
I feel like
Yeah.
everything would have worked better if
But
the art
my
was better.
can I actually say
Yeah,
my
yeah.
point? Thank you. So my point is that you should do scenes according to your artist's strengths. And I
Yeah.
feel like Bendis maybe wanted those scenes in, and that wasn't the artist's strength.
And I would 100%.
And so that's kind of my issue. I
Yeah.
think they should have maybe zoomed out a little bit more. They could have done a panel where you can see her like in a very noir style, propped up on her desk with her feet up or whatever, talking to this person, and then just do a full page spread and then do the word bubbles underneath, which Bendis clearly seems to enjoy doing because he has these conversations that spread across 2 pages, things like that. So I just think that the framing could have been different, and it would have made it easier to read, and it would have really played to the strengths of the artist.
Well, I totally agree in the fact that as a writer, you have to work to your artist's strength, and if they're not good at making facial expressions, then you can't like lean heavily on that. But I feel like that's so much more of a modern sensibility when it comes to comics, is like you and your artist are a partnership working together to create a singular vision. That's so much more of like the Image Comics method in comics, Marvel Comics now, when I don't feel like it always was like that. Like, did he necessarily pick this artist? Did he write the script before the artist saw it? Like, how much, this isn't Bendis as we know Bendis now. This is
Sure.
some young kid.
I think it really depends on who you're talking about, because like this was coming out at the same time as Transmetropolitan was coming out. And
Right.
I guarantee you that Warren Ellis and Derek Robertson were working very closely.
Which it more resembles an indie book than this does.
Right. Although it was published by DC.
Right, but it more resembles
Yes,
an indie
I
working.
absolutely agree, and things were changing.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately my heart is not even or the heart of my problem is not even necessarily with the framing.
Mm-hmm.
It's that her complete like posture and expression and everything, it's just copied and pasted from panel to panel to panel, and that's not how people look in an actual conversation. They make expressions. They furrow their brow.
But I think
They
the point
emote.
is that she's not emoting. Because you're reading that and saying, wow, she should be emoting here. The art is wrong. When in reality, you should look at the art as what is actually there and go, she's not making any emotion. I wonder why that is.
That'd be kind of creepy.
Maybe it's because she's a good interviewer. Maybe it's because she doesn't want to lead the suspect down any specific roads. The fact that you arch an eyebrow or like look surprised leads your subject in a specific way at line of questioning. Like, she is a good detective. That's one of the things you're supposed to learn from those scenes.
Yeah, but I don't think that the art conveys that well.
I can agree that it is not as good as it possibly could be, and it could have been laid out better, but I think that you missed something very important in those scenes, which is the fact that she's not changing her expression isn't lazy, it's intentional, and you're supposed to read that as, I learned something now.
Right.
Not as it's an error.
And my whole thing is that I agree with you about it's Chard, because people who are listening to me cannot see the hand gestures that I make. I agree with Chard about the device and what it tells me, but I didn't feel like I needed that device to be used more than once, because at that point it's like, okay, I can assume that she's going to do that every time. However, that said, I didn't read this in trades. Mm-hmm. I read this as 28 contiguous issues. So I wonder if I would have felt differently and felt like it was a visual callback had I read it in the trades, because then it's more like an episode of a show, which I feel like is how Bendis writes. He writes very episodically. He writes very long. So I can appreciate the tool, but in the way that I consume this, I was just kind of like, I don't need to sit through 4 more panels. And of course, Bendis is wordy, and it's like, it's hard. You can't really do good detective stories without people kind of blathering on, because how they blather on imparts a lot of what you're supposed to walk away from. But it's still hard because you're just kind of like, gosh, this is a lot of novel reading for a comic book kind of thing. But it's just the way that it goes.
Detective
and I think that
stories
no, I know.
are a lot of dialogue.
No, I understand. That's what I'm saying.
You got to interview
and that's
people.
what Brent is saying, is it's harder to do that in a comic book.
I mean, you got to pick a way to do it. I think he picked a way that he thought worked well. It's going to work for some people. It's not going to work for others. I like the sidebars with with just text in them. Some people hate that Bendis does that.
I was not super a fan of that.
But I mean,
I enjoyed
so there's panels in the middle in which dialogue is happening in word balloons, and then there's columns on in the gutters on like the far right and left columns that are just text, in which she's describing what she's doing, or like this that's in there, right? Like I didn't make that. Okay.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
It shows you how disruptive I found that I don't even remember it over.
I'm
And,
trying to find an example quickly.
Yeah.
In issue 10, where it's just these full page spreads of like this very pastel-y type, I don't know how to describe it other than like artsy portrait of whoever is talking, whoever is the main focus of
Like this.
of the issue.
Yeah.
And they'll have dialogue just kind of on the side there, and it like wrapping around, and they're not panels, it's a full page spread. I actually really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
I like that he's playing with the form, and he's doing it in a Marvel comic, and I feel like that was a big deal at the time.
Well, there are definitely a lot of things that I appreciate about this book. I think that this is honestly like one of the best depictions of what it's like to be on the street of Marvel's Manhattan. Like the Avengers and the Fantastic Four are out there, but you can't necessarily go and talk to them. Like the superhero community talks to each other, but it's like it's gossip. Like they don't necessarily know things for a fact. It's like, oh, I heard this about this person.
Yeah,
You're out to dinner and like Dr. Octopus goes running down the street with Spider-Man and the Human Torch fighting him, and that's just a thing.
Yeah, one of my favorite scenes in the entire book is when Jessica is dragging Rick Jones into the Fantastic Four or Freedom Tower or whatever, Freedom Building, and the like holographic receptionist or whatever is like, you don't have an appointment. It's like, I have to see him for this thing. It's like, well, your voice is modulated this much. It's not important. Like, it's not important enough or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, you go call back if you want it. And she's just like, this used to be way easier.
Yeah. Well, I like it too because she is such an outsider in the superhero universe, where she doesn't just have like a Captain America's pager line,
Right.
Yeah, she doesn't have one of those Avengers identity cards that's also a cell phone.
right? Or what does Carol have?
The
fucking
Palm Pilot printer.
that prints stuff.
Yeah.
Welcome to the early 2000s. Future
Life was
technology
weird before smartphones.
Yeah, I mean, it was a different era, but
So why don't they make a smartphone that can print stuff?
because you don't need to print things. Print media is dead,
Because it
kid.
would make the phone enormous and suck up all the battery. Also, Captain America has a pager.
Yeah,
That was weird.
yeah.
Because why doesn't he have a Palm Pilot that prints stuff?
Maybe he doesn't like using things that advanced.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe the pager is like his like weird concession. He's like, I won't carry that
in
weird.
the 30s, Toby.
I think he was born earlier than that. 'Cause
Yeah, he
then
was.
he would only be like 10 when World War II started.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe he was born in the 20s.
Yeah, I think he's like born 1924.
Right about that, yeah.
I could've
Anyway, I think what was so striking about a lot of this book for me, though, was how different of a Marvel universe it was in 2001 than it is now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, almost none of the depictions of other characters hold up at all.
Yeah.
Like, Scott Lang, completely different guy. Carol, completely different guy. Captain America, nothing like this. Like, I mean, not only that he's an old man now, but just, like, the way that they write him is so significantly different than this.
Yep.
And nobody knew his identity.
Yeah.
When in 2004, 3 years later, people knew Steve Rogers was Captain America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonder exactly when he came out with his superhero identity. Because I wonder if that was actually a conceit of this not being exactly up with the Marvel universe. Like, I should see if I can look that up.
Well, he comes out in Alias. Like, it's
mentioned.
it's mentioned on TV.
Yeah. That he like came on TV and announced who he was.
Which is weird because I can't think of all the examples, but there are a couple of things like that happen. Oh, like when Matt Murdock is being sued by the city, Daredevil, because he hasn't been outed yet.
Right.
And he's like, as a comics reader, like, oh, this is the trial where Spider-Man sits in for him. Things like that. But it hasn't happened yet in real life, but it's happening in the comic. But they don't know that.
Happens. It's funny, too, because he wrote both of those. Bendis wrote that Daredevil and also this Alias.
Other weird continuity thing. So in issue, 7 or 8, she's having coffee with Carol Danvers. And they're chit-chatting about stuff, and at one point they're talking about costumes. Like, how her costume was bad, and how at one point she's like, so you're like coming in at the tail end of her telling a story where basically she's talking about Spider-Man. Like, she's like, if that was true, then the spider webs would be coming out of your butt, and she was like, he had to have been 17.
Yeah,
at
he
the
couldn't have
time.
been any older than 17.
But then, which implies, at least when I first read that, I was like, oh, you're right, because you are older in this shifting, the shifting timeline of Marvel than Peter Parker. But then she's actually the same age as Peter Parker. So either she was telling a story about when she ran into him when she was young, or
maybe she just, because she doesn't know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Maybe she assumes that he was younger than he actually was.
Right.
Like, he was in college and she thought he was only like 17.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, was that Carol telling the story about meeting Spider-Man?
No, it was Jessica.
It was Jessica.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking that it was just kind of a weird time slip.
There was a lot of like continuity, sliding timeliney stuff because you find out that she and Peter were like classmates together.
Yeah, they were in high school
and they
together.
did that vintage art look, which makes you feel like, oh, it's 1960.
No, she was also in a coma and then woke up when Galactus shows up for the very first time,
Right.
which happened in like 1962.
Right. So it just, I don't know, man. The sliding timeline, yay.
Yeah, good times.
I hate it. But yeah, it was interesting to see how different like everything has become.
Yeah, it's
From now.
It's interesting to read those kind of entries that give you a very definite sense of like, this is what comics were like at this time.
Well,
And,
sorry.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, so my whole thing with this is that it's like I feel the same way watching it as I do watching certain things that were considered revolutionary TV at the time. And you watch them now and you're kind of like, oh, that's really... like, it makes you almost feel kind of icky.
The things that are most current at the time become dated the most quickly.
Yeah.
Like, that's always
And
the
I feel
case.
like the thing that I did walk away with from Alias with is kind of an authenticity issue. Like much hay has been made in the last couple of years about kind of depictions of characters and like conversations around things like gender and race and all of that stuff. And I think that on one hand, this is a really interesting book because it shows, by all accounts, a relatively realistic version of a strong female character. Well, I hate that. Not a strong female character, but a realized female.
Well, she's
character.
also, she can like lift cars and stuff.
She is physically strong, and she's arguably emotionally strong, but she has foibles. She's characterized fully and completely. But you also have Brian Michael Bendis, who's, basically was white as white bread, having, Luke Cage be like, like using street talk, which I know is something that came up a lot around Brian Azzarello's work on 100 Bullets, because he has those characters speak a lot, and it's like, are you being authentic in deploying that, or are you just kind of being like, this is what I think, Spanish street kids talk like, essay, like...
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain that Bendis's wife and adopted children are all people of color.
And that's fine. That still doesn't necessarily lend him authenticity to
No.
capture that as an author. But like, I'm definitely in the middle of this thing where it's like, but I also struggle with this notion of folks being like, well, if you're a white male author, you can't write anybody else because you don't know what it's like. It's like, but that's hard because the notion of fiction is to try to step in other people's shoes, present different things, all this other stuff. And so it's like, there were a couple times where I found myself especially like in the sexual stuff, and like the way Luke Cage was talking and some of those sorts of things. And really the one that really made me just kind of be like, I wonder how this would be handled nowadays was Purple. And the whole kind of like, he didn't rape her, but he did sexually abuse her, basically, and emotionally abuse her, and basically did things that are almost as tantamount to rape as could be.
Well, also, he raped other characters in front of her.
Right.
Which is, like, I feel like that, okay, so he cops out of raping the main character by raping other women in front of her. I was like, how, that is, I mean... It's not the same level of bad, but it is also a horrible
very
thing
bad.
to write about.
Well, and then like, and so like, yeah, and so I feel like that fed into these two things that I've got where it's like, I feel like the book has a little bit of an authenticity problem where I'm just kind of like, and that whole like I was saying, the HBO thing where it's like, wow, you just really decided like, you know what our final season needs? More titties. It's like, no, I really don't think we need that. And so like, I felt like it was handled tastefully for its time, but I think that even Bendis would probably write it way better now and more
I would
sensitively. If that's, I mean, like, you know, and then you get into that weird, like, Alan Moore being like, I can write about rape because rape is as bad as murder, and we write about murder constantly.
I don't think that was Alan Moore. I think
Yes.
wasn't that Mark Miller?
No.
Oh.
Alan Moore went on a whole tirade about this because there's a bunch of rape in V for Vendetta, and he's just like, and he wasn't nearly as aggressive about it. He was just kind of like, I find it, in his very British way, I find it so fascinating that this would be so disturbing to people, but I can have all my characters defenestrate each other, 5 panels earlier, and that somehow is okay, and it shows how we've, all this thing. It's like, yeah, okay, Alan Moore, your intellectualization of it is awesome. However, it's not the same. It leaves different kinds of things, and there's clearly a cultural problem around that particular crime. So maybe step off your weird little hyper intellectual soapbox for a moment.
But
Alan Moore is Alan Moore.
I was kind of interested to know what other people thought about the whole Purple Man rant, where he goes very
Meta.
Grant Morrison at the end of Animal Man meta.
Yeah. You want to know how I felt about it?
How did you feel about it?
I hated it. It was awful.
I also hated it.
Yeah, I didn't.
Like, it felt so weird and obnoxious and out of place.
Well, yeah, and it happens.
Where does this come from?
Right, it happened at such a weird point.
Yeah.
I actually remember stopping like 3 or 4 my word bubbles into it, and skimming back a couple pages and then forward again, and I'm like, and I was actually doing page counts and looking at the page numbers on the pages to be like, did I get a copy that was missing a page? Did I skip a page somehow? Like, because it's all of a sudden like, you're a comic book character, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about,
And
man?
like, maybe it's just supposed to show like how out of touch with reality that he is, that he thinks everything's happening in a comic book. But the fact that everything is actually happening in a comic book, like, really fucks with that as...
Right. Well,
yeah,
then
I don't think it's because if he wanted to do that, I mean, he would have been like, "Oh, we're just players on like a stage play or in some TV show or whatever."
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like he didn't have to use the comic books. But like when Psycho Pirate does it, it means something.
Yeah.
Like it results in a thing, and it is built on a different thing. Like this has no foundation and goes nowhere.
Yeah.
Well, especially because he kind of, from my perspective, he comes out of that perspective. Like when he has that whole exchange with her in the prison. But by
Right.
the time he hooks back up with her after her words, it's clear he's only talking to her. Like there's none of that implied like notion of self that he's demonstrating in that scene in the rest of the interaction that he has in that book.
Yeah, like he's very calm and collected, and he's like, I'm going to do this horrible thing to you, and then I'm going to do this horrible
Yeah.
thing to you.
He's like, oh, everyone, I need a show. You hit the person to your left until they're dead. Like,
Yeah. That is very weird.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy it.
and it's that thing where it's like, yeah, like on the base level, like it's the difference for me between Garth Ennis' first Max Punisher run versus his preceding ones, where it's like his first one, it was like, and there's a guy who's got a hole in his face and he's shithead or whatever it was, because it wasn't ass face, because he'd already done that in Preacher, arse face, and like it was like the Russian guy's in a dress and like partially lobotomized, and you're just like, okay, like it was like that overt, like we're gonna push the fucking limit, yeah, and then later Garth Ennis' Punisher stuff is super gritty and super real and super violent, but super satisfying. And is not bombastic in that way, but you're still like, holy shit, I do not want to live in this version of the Punisher, because goddamn does he like destroy people in this horrible way.
Yeah.
And I felt like, so on one hand I was like, this is interesting, like Zebediah Kilgrave is actually an incredibly fucking crazy character to have, like in a universe where people are that powerful. Any guy who could just show up and be like, yeah, by the way, why don't you just like rip his arms off? Like that actually is a terrifying villain. And so I felt like there was an attempt to be like, isn't that actually scary in a true adult way? But it felt so like,
Well,
overplayed and
he is
bombastic.
going to be the villain in AKA Jessica Jones, the
It's not
Netflix
called that
series.
Yeah,
Is
that
it
was just
not?
called Jessica
It's
Jones.
just called Marvel's Jessica Jones.
Okay. In Jessica Jones, played by David Tennant, and I wonder how closely they're going to follow this, like, or what they're going to change to fit into the cinematic universe.
Well, that's actually something I wanted to bring up about this, which is reading this again, because I've forgotten everything when I read it the first time. I'm like, the thing about Jessica Jones that's so interesting is that she had a life as a superhero, realized she wasn't going to be the A-list team, and then chose to still help people in her own unique way. How do you do that? Like, there's no Avengers legacy here. Like, she couldn't have been on the Avengers.
No, but if assuming that the Avengers timeline has moved forward in something roughly approaching what the movies have actually been taking place over, which you kind of get the impression that it's not exactly that, but it's been a number of years, maybe not exactly 10, but 5 or 6 at least. Like, it is possible for her to have basically been, recruited by S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever, been a superhero for a brief time, a few months.
Yeah.
Like, superhero for 3 months, kidnapped by the Purple Man for 8 months, and then out.
Yeah.
Like, that could have happened with
Or you cut it entirely. She does what she does, has the powers, but never, basically was like, I'm never going to be a superhero.
It's different.
But it does make it different.
Yeah, like
how
the legacy.
they handled Daredevil was basically the Avengers came in, they ruined Hell's Kitchen, and now he's like a street level superhero doing his own thing, and I could see that working with her.
Yeah.
I'm also now wondering if they got basically rights to Spider-Man back enough to have him as part of her backstory.
Yeah, from what I understand right now, the rights for Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe extend to Civil War. I think Marvel has the rights to make the first Spider-Man movie, and then Avengers. Now, the character who is supposedly rumored to be showing up on the Netflix stuff is Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange. There's a rumor that he will show up at some point in those series.
Which would go along with them being the Defenders.
Correct.
Rather than, say, the Heroes for Hire.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see how that all shakes out.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be very interested in doing a follow-up episode to this once the series is out, talking about it and comparing it.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to jump back really quick to an earlier point you made about the authenticity of Bendis' words in Luke Cage's mouth.
Yeah.
I have that problem too. I have that problem every time that I'm like boot up Grand Theft Auto 5 and it's just like, who wrote this?
Right.
Like, in what way is this authentic or at least like respectful in any way?
Right.
And who's buying it that has the authenticity to speak out on it in a way that it'll be heard properly.
Yeah.
So that game developers won't do it anymore if it is offensive. Because I think it's just like, I don't know who wrote Grand Theft Auto 5, but I can guess there's probably some white guys.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think that's the challenge is that it, and then you get into the things that, like, depending on what your interest is in comics, because I know that we sometimes have gotten flack for being more left-leaning of a podcast on some of our stuff.
We've never gotten flack for that.
Really?
Well, a couple of times.
Yeah.
But
we got called social justice warrior panderers.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I think I think that there are some interesting arguments about, like, why do you have to basically like break open an encyclopedia every on who creates your work every time? Like, sometimes you just want to open up the Ghost Rider book with the Latino guy and read about a Latino racing street kid. He does appear to be straight as well, but I mean street kid.
Yeah.
And like, do I have to like double check that the guy himself is Latino and all this stuff? But I think the challenge of it has to do with the like how close to weirdly
yes,
like the character-esque stuff.
Yes.
And I think that's where a lot of people, like even I, who love 100 Bullets, and he was working with an artist who, and apparently Eduardo Rizzo and him collaborated quite a bit on a lot of aspects of that story, from what I've heard. I don't know. But like, there are a lot of issues in 100 Bullets where it's people of color from various backgrounds. And there's occasionally, like, you're just kind of, like, I feel like I kind of cocked my eye at it and being like, who did you talk to before you characterize these people this way? I think I found out that he had actually done a lot of research for it, but I don't know or remember that off the top of my head. But
a bottom line, I think it comes down to, does it feel authentic? Does it feel genuine? Or does it feel exploitative?
Yeah.
Exploitative.
And I think the challenge with that is that everybody can walk away with a different impression of whether or not someone succeeded on that. And that can that's the whole like critique is hard even with things you love thing. And I think we brought it up a number of times in the conversation about the representation of female characters.
Yeah.
Like I can walk away having a very different feeling than Kaylee. And
yeah. And like, as you were saying, like, I don't feel like I necessarily want to have to audit every piece of media that I consume to determine whether it meets the minimum threshold for, I don't even know what you would want to call that.
Cultural sensitivity?
Yeah. Like, on a certain level, you're either offended or you're not, and you don't want to go like, let me kick over all the stones I can see to see if I need to be offended by this.
Sure.
Or
Well,
not.
I think if you do that, you will experience compassion fatigue. But it is important to have a conversation. I find that conversations go the best. There's probably a much more eloquent way to say that, but whatever. Conversations are the most impactful when everybody kind of has their thing that they're looking into, and they can say, this comic does this right and it does this poorly, but I still really appreciate what they tried to do here, here, and here. But we do need to have a conversation about the representation and this aspect. And then somebody else can say, well, coming from it from this perspective, I actually found this to be really good and this to be not so great. And when you're able to have a conversation like that, especially an online community like Tumblr or something like that, it's helpful.
Yeah.
But you will definitely burn yourself out very quickly if you try to look for every single aspect of cultural sensitivity, gender sensitivity, anything representative. If you look at every single aspect and you try to flip over every single stone and look at every single possible outcome of what has been written, you just can't do it. You'll be exhausted in no time.
I think I don't know. I think some authors are better at putting themselves in someone else's shoes and hypothesizing what life would be like as someone of another gender, someone of another race, someone of another age, someone of another sexual orientation. And I think some authors are not good at that. And so they rely very heavily on caricatures and tropes because they don't have the level of empathy or imagination or whatever it is. I don't know what to call it, but they don't have enough of an ability to get inside someone else's head, create a fictional character that I can believe in.
That would literally be empathy.
Yeah, okay. They don't have the empathy to write a character like that, and I think there are some very good examples of white authors who write black characters very well, men who write women very well, women who write men very well, straight men who write gay characters very well. And I think a lot of it has to do with that kind of skill set of putting yourself into someone else's shoes for their lifetime and kind of imagining what it all would have been like.
Well, I mean, some of that... Oh, sorry.
Luke Cage is he's not in this book enough for me to make those kinds of decisions. And so that's why, to me, when he shows up early on, I wonder. That's why it brings that up, because he doesn't feel fully realized as a character in this book.
Right.
He's not in it very often. And I find the ending with him and her and the baby very problematic because I don't get to see them have a relationship and then go, yeah, let's have this baby together. It's just like they just are kind of strangers still.
Yeah.
I don't buy that he is interested enough in her based on what I've seen her do to him. Well, she's crazy.
Right. But then they're also friends, and so I think that there's an implied relationship that goes back further than that.
Yeah.
That he's willing to take all this shit from her.
Right. And I didn't get to see it, and I feel cheated. Like, I wanted to see more of their... And I know a lot happens outside of the panels. They say that a lot, and time passes, but, like, I think that story would have been awesome.
Sure.
Like, I feel like that hit the cutting room floor, and I wanted to see that.
But I would have to go back and look, but I would imagine that this book is probably the first appearance of the modern Luke Cage, who doesn't wear a yellow shirt and a tiara.
Well, he doesn't wear a yellow flared because he still wore a yellow shirt,
right? But he doesn't wear his classic 70s design.
No,
with
she
the
wears
chain
it.
belt and the flared collar and the tiara. He looks like a dude, like just a normal dude wearing normal clothing.
Apparently, that happened in 1992.
Yeah. So
what?
Him changing. He was relaunched in a new series. Revived his character up to the 90s, symbolically destroying his original costume.
Okay, but I'm talking more in terms of his characterization. Like,
I
I
mean-
think between this and then the Pulse that followed it, and then being on the new Warrior or the new Avengers,
Right.
Like, I think that he evolved into what is now his modern characterization.
Yeah. Through largely Bendis' hand.
Right. And I think
So-
that this is kind of when we first see him at the beginning of this series, like, this is Bendis picking him up from
Yeah.
him being kind of
Where
in limbo. Because the
he
new.
owns a bar.
Yeah, like the Heroes for Hire, I think, like, they had a mini series in the 90s, and that was like it. Like, they were really not around
Yeah.
for a long time.
That's where the bar that she goes to that he owns, isn't that the Heroes for Hire, like, HQ, basically? Don't in
I
later
honestly don't
series they have an
I think
office, like,
so.
above a bar? Isn't that his bar? I don't know.
It changes a lot,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's, for me personally, like, I love the crime aspects of this. I feel like sometimes it gets really bogged down in the superhero-dom. And, like, I found the whole Captain America sneaking around, sleeping with this woman who must think he's some kind of doctor or important businessman, to where he needs a pager to, like, escape in the middle of the night from her, where he gets a call from shit. Like, that's how I read that scene, I guess.
Well, she
And then
knows that he didn't leave through the front door, so she must have some idea.
maybe
Yeah.
he likes fire escapes.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I don't know.
No, you were right about the modern realization of Luke Cage. It was actually later retconned that he met Jessica Jones right after getting out of prison.
Okay. There you go.
But yeah, I don't know. I found the superhero stuff kind of hard.
It was a little bit weird, and it doesn't quite match up. But
Yeah.
then, I mean, I don't think it was supposed to. The whole point of the Marvel Max line was that it was kind of not quite as removed as Vertigo, but in its own continuity. Like, the things that you see in Marvel Max are not necessarily carried over to the mainstream Marvel
Well, that was
universe.
Marvel Knights.
There, you're right. That was
Marvel Max,
Knights.
I think, was always supposed to be in comics.
Sort of.
Well, the
because,
Max Punisher wasn't, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was about to say,
Yeah.
is that Max Punisher was, like, way, like...
Yeah.
There's no way he does the things in Max Punisher and not have a bunch of superheroes show up, be like, what the hell are you doing? I'm
'Cause
just, like,
isn't-
launching rocket launchers.
There's no other superheroes in that book, is there?
No,
that I recall.
can't think of anyone
Yeah.
showing up. I think a few, like, C and T tier villain types
Yeah.
show up. But I can't. Well, is it Punisher Max when he blows up the bar with all of them in it? With, like, all the, like, C tier superheroes? That might actually have been back when he got added to the regular line.
Yeah, it's been
Because I
so
think
long,
Ennis
I
did
don't
I
remember.
did a run on Punisher that was actually not Max,
Hmm.
and I think that's the one where he murdered, well, or almost murders, like Stiltman, the Vulture, like all those, like, shitty C tier
Yeah.
New York villains who are, I think, meeting under the hood at that point, and he, like, blows up a bar with them in it, and they're, like, running out and on fire, and he's just like, yeah.
It could,
I can't remember if that
be
was
that
Max or
that
not.
Punisher is in a different alternate universe because the Marvel Max Supreme Power series is a different
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right.
number.
Yeah. So, I don't know. This
Yeah, I
one
don't know
made
that
its
they had a
way
consistent
in.
vision for Max the same way, like they did with Ultimate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of the Marvel Knights stuff was actually in continuity.
Yeah,
Others were different Earths as well.
Inhumans, I think, ended up becoming in
Fantastic Four
continuity.
was not. Spider-Man ended up being... Some of it did, I think.
Yeah.
Well, as
It
is always
started
the
out as
case,
not,
the
but-
things that end up being canon are the things that are popular, or
Right.
the writers later go like, "Hey, I want to use this."
Right. Or they're currently also writing Daredevil and will soon be writing New Avengers, and so they just pretend like it all exists in the same universe
Again,
anyway.
Bendis is not the best when it comes to continuity. He just does what he wants.
Yeah.
and then retcons what doesn't fit.
And then fucking Speedball in this book, man.
Yeah, that was weird.
'Cause he almost blows him up on accident because he, like, can't...
Control his bubbles.
Right, and then later he kills a bus full of kids.
Yeah,
And
poor
starts
Speedball.
Civil War, right?
Yeah. So,
He doesn't start Civil War.
yeah.
He's there. He survives, but it was Nitro exploding.
Right, because
Yeah,
him and
because-
the New Warriors were doing their
Right.
thing,
Right.
chasing them.
Yeah, but it
Yeah.
wasn't Speedball specifically.
No.
Well, no, I meant that he not having control of his power.
Right.
Right.
Like,
That basically triggers Civil War in some way or another.
Right.
So,
Then he becomes Super Fetish Speedball.
penance.
Ugh.
I loved Penance. You guys you're
awful.
Warren
you're
Ellis
out of
handled
it.
that pretty good.
I think so too.
I'm pretty sure that wasn't Warren Ellis. We talked about this
Yeah,
before, and I looked it up, and it was
Ellis did write Thunderbolts
He
for a
did,
while.
Yeah.
but
And I'm saying
but
that his
Penance-
characterization of Penance
Oh, okay.
was handled.
I'm
I
sorry.
thought-
Yeah.
Like, there are lots of scenes where Ellis is writing Penance where he talks of, like, there's a whole exchange, like, because I think Garrigan is, like, complaining to Osborn, like, why do we have to put up with this mopey psychopath? And he's like, well, first of all, Garrigan, you're one to talk. Second of all, like, think about what he's been through. Think about it. He's like, if that is what it takes for him to do what he needs to do and I can manipulate him into doing it, I have no problems with that.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like Ellis did a good job of coming in and being like, yeah, this was kind of an extreme move, but let me polish that up for you.
Yeah.
I just a few months ago looked up who actually did that Penance changeover, and I can't remember who it was now.
I wanted to ask you guys about the I think the strongest story in the book for me was when she goes to the small town to go get the daughter who ran away back. I think that was the most like crime fiction the book is, and the least superhero-y it is. And I think that's where it like shone for me. How did you guys feel about that story?
It reminded me of the second story in Black Sad.
In that it was excellent and you loved it?
Well, in that it was, it was the detective story, and he's normally in the big city, but he went to the small town, and then there's all the
classic
small town
detective stuff.
problems.
Yeah,
I have
my
a very
mind did not go
limited
there.
range of references when it comes to detective
You should probably
fiction that I
read
can
more
compare
stuff.
things
Maybe
to.
you would know more about detective fiction.
I
don't know.
I don't care that much.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird
just
to
not my
just be
thing.
like, oh, I don't like that thing, so I'm not going to learn about it at all.
No, I mean it was very much cookie cutter
Yeah.
pulp detective fiction novel.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that it drew the parallel back to mutants as like queerality, and where everybody's like, oh yeah, she's a mutant, she wouldn't deny it, and then you
Right.
find out, no, she has a girlfriend, and that's
Yeah.
why she ran away.
It's not the thing. Yeah, what does the woman say? It's like being gay or Jewish. If you're not it, you don't pretend to be
you'd
it.
say,
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're not, you'd say you weren't.
Right, that's
Yeah.
what it is. Yeah. And I
And you
think
didn't deny it.
right. So,
I thought that they did a really good job of characterizing the way that mutants are viewed in the Marvel universe.
Yeah,
as kind of this like frightening other, like anybody could be a mutant,
Right.
and like you don't know what they could have some strange power where they like totally fuck with your head or just kill you or like do any number of crazy things, and like you don't know, and that's frightening. Like when she goes to the hospital. And
Yeah.
she's like trying to tell them like I have powers, like my biology is fucked up, and they're like, "Are you a mutant?" Like there are tests that we have to do.
yeah.
Like
And
it was very cool.
the preacher in the small town just firmly set in his faith. Nothing could shake him. Didn't matter what she said.
Well, I thought. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Kayla.
Oh, I thought it was cool too how the teenage cheerleader kept calling. What was the girl's name? It was Rachel, right? That ran away. Kept calling Rachel like a mutant, and so Jessica is basically challenging her and saying like, "Oh, what do you mean by that? Like, is that a slang term?" And it's like when somebody calls, like a queer kid any sort of slur, you're like, "Oh, what do you mean? Do you mean homosexual?
Right.
Do you mean bisexual? Like, and you're challenging that, and it read naturally, like as somebody myself who tries to stand up for the rights of others and things like that. I really empathize with that, where it is a challenge, where you have to stand up for people.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed it.
And also her digging for information in that way, because it's important to the case that she knows as much as she can.
Yeah.
I loved it felt like such classic detective writing too, where you have these suspects that are like, they probably did not do it, like with the dad, but everybody's kind of got their mindset on that character, and without any facts, or without any of the detectives go ahead, because they're not going to say yes or no until they have all the facts. Jessica like inadvertently kind of gets the dad killed. So I found that to be really interesting,
Yeah.
because she won't deny that the dad didn't do it, and the aunt and the mom are kind of crazy. They're just like, "Oh, is your good for nothing ex-husband? Let's go stab him or whatever."
I also really like the fact that she was like, yeah, a lot of my work is just vetting the client to make sure
Yeah.
that they're not fucking with me.
Yeah.
And she does get fucked with repeatedly.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I thought the crime stuff in this was my favorite, obviously. But I think there's a lot of good stuff in here. And I think I have the same reaction to this that I had to Man Without Fear, which is, I hope they use the ideas from this to make the TV show, but like not all of it, because there's a lot of stuff in here that that isn't that great.
And that is what they did.
Yeah, and it worked. So.
And it worked really well. So
Yeah.
hopefully they'll keep that up, and the series will be as good as Daredevil.
Yeah.
But I generally really like this series. I think that there's a lot of good stuff in here. And I think it's a good touchstone for somebody who wants to go back and look through kind of the history of the different eras of the Marvel Universe. Like, this is very much a transitional book. Like, this kind of has its foot right at the beginning of what has become the last 15 years of Marvel.
Yeah.
And I think much more so than something like Avengers Forever. Like, I think it's a good thing to look at this and go, okay, this is where a lot of stuff came from. Whereas Avengers Forever was much more kind of retconning and closing the door on stuff that came before it.
It's kind of retrospective, too.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of looking back.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, I enjoyed it overall. I had a fun time reading it.
Anybody else have any final thoughts? Or do you want to move on to recommendations?
I've been trying to look up stuff about the Marvel Max imprint and what we were talking about the alternate universes. Apparently, Marvel Max imprint was actually created for this comic, specifically so that they didn't have to go through the Comics Code Authority.
Yeah, that was still just barely a thing at this point.
Yeah,
I think they ended up ditching it in like about 2004, like entirely.
I feel like it lingered for a long time around Ennis's Punisher, like as the only thing that had the Max label on it. Longer than that, but
yeah, he transitioned the character over to the main Marvel universe in 2004.
oh, okay. For some reason, I thought his Punisher stuff lasted longer.
Oh, I meant his Jennifer Jones stuff.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the end of issue 28
Jessica
says
Jones.
the Pulse coming in February or something like that.
Yeah.
And that was issue 28, so that would be right around the end of 2003.
Yeah. So Max was created for this comic, but had other comics in it as well. But
I also really like the way that Ben Urich and the other people at the Bugle are shown like really handling J. Jonah Jameson, who's just this rich guy on a fucking warpath.
Yeah.
And they're like, Jonah, you can't do this. Jonah, you can't do that. Like, we have to be like a legitimate paper and actually do things and pay people when we say we're going to pay them.
Yeah. He's crazy in this book, man.
He is. But, I mean, Jameson has always been fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I think this is the first book that they could show how crazy he was.
Yeah. In like a power-hungry kind of bastardy way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Do we
You
want
guys
to do Rex?
Yeah.
Should we start with our fan pitch for this week?
Yeah. Especially since I need to remember what I'm pitching.
So, this week's fan pitch comes from Tony Cortero, and he is nominating Here by Richard McGuire. It's a graphic novel, largely pictographic, that tells the story of a room through the passage of time. And apparently this was originally published as a 6-page comic in 1989, and then in 2010 a graphic novel version was released that was like greatly expanded. And it's basically a panel that shows an unadorned corner of a room in a house and then shows that exact same place moving through time, but not chronologically. It kind of jumps forward and backward through time. And it includes several recurring characters, such as a woman shown cleaning a room in 1973, 83, 93, 94, 95, and 96. The corner of the room itself is the most enduring presence in the story, and panels show the house being constructed and then later demolished. So it's kind of a study of space and time. And that is Here by Richard McGuire.
I feel like I'd like that better if it was chronological, kind of like the Gary Paulson's The Rifle. What was it? Was it The Rifle?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. Sorry.
The author of Hatchet wrote a book about like this gun that gets handed from one person to another, and it tells the entire story of like all these different people who it goes to.
What was the name you said?
Like The Rifle?
No, the author.
Gary Paulson?
Gary Paulson. Okay, because I'm just looking at the Wikipedia article, and it mentions this being influential on the work of Chris Ware.
Sorry. Special shout out to listener Lindsay Carr. She's been talking to me about Chris Ware.
No. Cool.
Full circle.
Indeed. So who would like to pitch next?
Guess I'll go.
Okay.
So I've got a rewind revisit pitch, just like last time. We always say that we want to go back and look at books that we've talked about after more has been published. And so this week, Brandon Hill messaged me and told me that The Fuse Volume 2 is out now. So we talked about Volume 1 on the show before, and I want to talk about it and its relationship to Volume 1. So I want to pitch The Fuse Volumes 1 and 2. We've talked about Volume 1 before. For those of you who don't know, that is a space cop solving space murders space station story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is by, I would say, show favorite and all-around awesome guy, Anthony Johnston.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Justin Greenwood does the art on that series.
Yeah.
The artist of the third volume of Stumptown, which is another excellent detective series.
Just got to get those plugs in there, huh?
Hey, man. Gotta read them. They're good.
Stumptown is good. We need to talk
Fantastic.
about it sometime.
I remain continually, willfully ignorant of detective fiction.
My favorite is on my Stumptown issue number 1. Greg signed it, and it just says, "Watch your back." Like, thanks, Greg.
Sounds like Greg. I say, having only met him in person once or twice.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I still haven't met him. When I moved here, I was told that I would see him all the time at the shop, and I've never met him.
I might have told this story before on the show, but Joe would always point to crowds of people and say, "Oh, that's Greg Rucka." As so for years, I had no idea what he looked like until I walked by his table at Comic-Con and there was a little placard that said Greg Rucka. I was like, oh, okay. Now I know who that is. But he would just point to giant crowds of people. Oh, there he is. That's Greg Rucka. And I was like, who? Which one? There's 20 people there.
I've stood next to him while he has a conversation with somebody else on many occasions.
That's the same thing as being in that conversation.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I think the closest interaction with him I had is I was sitting outside of Gabby's and he comes walking by at a brisk pace and I'm looking at my phone or something like that and I look up and Greg Rucka is coming right at me and I'm like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" And he's like, And then goes inside.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super
Anyway.
cool. Brush with fame.
Kay, did you want to say anything else about The Fuse Volume 2?
I mean, read it and listen to our Volume 1 episode, and hopefully we pick it and you can listen to our Volume 2 episode as well.
Totes. Kaylee, what do you got?
I am bringing Journey into Mystery, Fear Itself, Volumes 1 and 2, which is the introduction of Kid Loki.
What?
Yep, written by Kieran Gillen with art by Jamie McKelvey.
A fantastic series.
Yes.
Yes.
They
I've
seem
actually
to team up a lot, don't they?
They do, yeah.
Well, they've been friends for a long time, and they got their start together on Phonogram, which is kind of their breakout thing.
I've read that.
But this is actually the beginning of a much longer run that I really wanted to talk about for a long time. But it's a little bit too short for a long run, but it's a little bit too long for a regular episode.
And it's jumpy, only because there's stuff you need to know about the Marvel Universe, I feel like, in parts of it.
I feel like once you get started, you'll be fine. If
Yeah.
you've listened to our previous episodes on Thor, you'll be fine.
I feel like not everyone has done that, though.
Well, I feel like
Well, I mean,
you don't feel like you know enough about Loki. Go back and listen to those episodes on Thor.
yeah, there you go.
Right.
But I have faith in our listeners. They're smart enough to figure it out.
Yep.
'Cause they are intelligent, beautiful people.
Yeah.
I do want to say we should sometimes sit down and figure out how much reading we would consider too much for the main show, because we've done like 33s.
I don't know if we've done
27 was Planetary, which I'm pretty sure was the longest thing we read until this.
Planetary was a long run. wasn't it?
Annihilation was
No.
32 or 33.
Okay, because this was 28.
Yeah.
And my general rule of thumb is 24,
Okay.
unless it's kind of like it's a quicker read, or
Yeah.
if it's just like a little bit longer. It's like, okay, like this was 28. It's like, okay, we can get that in there.
Yeah, Planetary was definitely not a long run. That was
Okay,
a regular episode.
I guess I thought it was shorter than it was.
Yeah.
I thought it was like 27 issues.
It is 27 issues.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So, like I said, it's
What are we
It's a-
even talking about?
somebody said 33 issues.
Oh, Annihilation.
It's one of those.
Annihilation. Okay,
Yeah.
there you go.
I think that was the longest one we've done to date.
Yeah, generally my rule of thumb is about 24 issues or 2 volumes, give or take.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. 'Cause,
Anyway.
yeah,
So-
I find a lot of those comics where it's like, is this too long to pitch on the main show? Not long enough for a long run, and we really need to figure out a way
Yeah.
to talk about those.
if it's like 40 issues, I feel like that's a little bit much.
Okay.
But
Unless they're all really short issues.
yeah, just keep shrugging.
It's my go-to.
All right.
Eh.
Kaylee, did you want to say anything else about Journey into Mystery? It's a great series.
Yeah, it's a great series.
It's a great
You
launching
should read
off
it.
point if you want to keep reading that, even though you don't have to for that episode if we
Right.
pick it. You should read the entire thing because it's just that good.
Mm-hmm.
It's up there with Hickman's Fantastic Four run, which is another one that's in that too short, too long realm, because that's like
You could throw in all
it's like
those
45
FF books,
issues or
though,
something
and
like
make
that.
it a long run.
What's that?
You could throw in all those FF books and make it a long run.
Oh, that's part of the run. Like you have to read those.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah,
Totally.
Journey into Mystery, Fear Itself, super good. So I'm going to bring back a book that I pitched a long-ass time ago. I am going to pitch Ring of the Nibelung, adapted by P. Craig Russell, who is a phenomenal freaking artist. And this is a 2-volume adaptation of Wagner's classic Ring Cycle, which will be very, very familiar to you if you've ever read or watched Lord of the Rings. I don't know how much I can say about it, given that it's like this very, very classic opera that you probably know a bit about anyway, but it's essentially the story of Ragnarok, and the gods are running around doing crazy things, and there's a hero named Sigmund, and it's super cool. There's Valkyries and Odin and a dragon, and it's super fun and beautifully drawn by Russell, and I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite comics, and I think that we could really talk about it.
We could really talk about
We
it.
could really talk about it.
For realsies.
We could get down in there and talk about it,
For
all
real-
talkie style,
The real.
with words and phrases,
Yeah.
past participles and such.
Mm-hmm. All the words.
All of them.
Use them all.
Chard, what are you pitching?
So next week, 2 days after the release of this episode, on Wednesday, the episode's not coming out on Wednesday. It's coming out on Monday.
It is.
You
That's
won't be
very
confused
confusing.
because that will have already happened. So I don't know why I'm clarifying. But on Comic Book Day of the week that this releases, 5 Ghosts Deluxe Edition hardcover Volume 1 comes out, which contains trades 1 and 2 of the series 5 Ghosts, which is what I'm recommending. So it is I'm going to read this from the Image website because I think it's funny, but it says, after a tragic encounter with an artifact known as the Dreamstone, infamous treasure hunter Fabian Gray is possessed by 5 literary ghosts and granted access to their unique ability. He gets like magic powers from literary characters.
Cool.
And it's rad. And he's a treasure hunter. And it's really fun. And I like it, and the art's really, I don't know, it's interesting. I find it to be...
What sort of literary characters?
Dracula, and other.
Oh, see, I was thinking authors. Like, I
No,
must have
no,
missed
no,
where
no,
you
no,
said
no.
characters.
The ghosts of
literary
characters from books.
Yeah.
See, I was thinking authors. I was
No,
just like, man,
yeah.
I hope Edgar Allan Poe is in there. I hope
he
his
gets-
power
he
is
gets
like.
Poe.
he gets-
I knew you were going to say
he
Yeah,
gets,
of course I'm
like-
going to say Poe. Emily Dickinson as well. I hope those two.
He gets like Emily Dickinson's sharp elbows and Edgar Allan Poe's giant head, and like becomes the world's greatest fighting machine.
Could you have the Bronte sisters, 3 heads on one body, and count that as one?
Yeah, that would be horrifying, but sure.
Yeah.
No, he's got like a Western, there's like a Western guy, like a cowboy, so he like shoots better, and like, it's like a fantasy draft of literary
like
character
it.
powers that you would want. They're not like bad. He doesn't get like bad literary characters.
So it's like Dial H for Hero,
Quasimodo.
but with literary characters?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's like
Or
Ben 10. with literary
yes.
Or Ben 10 is Dial H for Heroes with the numbers filed
Yeah,
off.
it's-
the
it is-
Ben
creators have
10
admitted
is perfect.
No,
That is-
it's Ben 10. I'm with Caitlin. It's Ben 10 with literary characters. Or also,
Isn't it Ben 5?
No, this would be Ben
Yeah.
5, yeah. But
Well,
also he has more dudes than 10. That's
Yeah.
not why it's called Ben 10.
It's because it's 10 minutes.
Yeah, what do you know about anything?
Obviously,
more
I haven't
cartoons.
watched
Yeah.
enough Ben 10.
You know nothing. But I can't even remember what I was going to say about this. Oh, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the like Cowboy Ninja Viking, where it's just like these things are helpful to him in the situations that he has to kind of go through. So he's still a treasure hunter plus powers.
Cool.
It's fun. Check it out. I like it. There's like 5 volumes out right now. So
Nice.
1 and 2.
And so or Deluxe Book 1.
Yeah, or Deluxe Book 1 if you want to purchase that.
All right. Brant?
So I wanted to come and further some of this interest in detective genre stuff. So I decided that I was going to pitch the first 3 volumes of a series called Stumptown,
Yeah.
which is written by Greg Rucka about, detectives and stuff.
Yeah.
Which I think we've talked about enough that I don't really need to pitch it because it got talked
set in
about before
Portland?
I even said to
I
pitch
assume.
it. So what was that?
It's set in Portland, I assume.
Yes. Set in Portland, and apparently it actually is technically set in the same universe as some of Greg Rucka's novels. His Atticus Kodiak series and a novel called A Fistful of Rain, because minor characters who are in those books show up in this comic, which is interesting because those are good novels. And
I didn't know that. 'Cause
Yeah.
I haven't read those novels.
yeah.
So,
He's a good novelist. I read his Queen and Country books because Brant loaned them to me.
Yes. So yeah,
Sweet.
I was going to pitch. I think the first 3 volumes, because volume 1's only 4 issues, volumes
Right.
2 and 3 are only 5 issues long. So
Yeah, that's well within our remit.
and it reads really fast.
Yes.
The art is excellent. Matthew
Southworth.
Southworth for the first 2 and Justin Greenwood for the 3rd one.
So we can pick between Justin Greenwood doing detective fiction or Justin Greenwood doing detective fiction in
Yes.
space.
that's
Police
right.
procedural in space. There's a
Police
difference
police
between
detectives.
There's
No,
a difference.
No.
There's a
There's
massive
a
difference.
difference.
This is why it's just like I know you don't know
On a
anything.
space station.
Detective fiction implies that they are private detectives,
Or, excuse
and
me.
police procedurals
crime.
is the
Can we call
genre.
it crime fiction?
That's the like blanket that it's under, but that would be like calling all books fiction. Just like it's just fiction. They're all
well,
about
no, I'm being
things.
more specific
You
than
said
that.
Well,
detective
no, it's
fiction
like
can
saying
also
science
be
fiction. It's like, well, was it
police.
about robots?
Okay.
So
Was
it's
it
like-
about
it's like a-
aliens?
it's like a
Space
Venn
opera versus
diagram.
hard sci-fi versus.
It's like a Venn diagram. Like some crime fiction is also police procedural.
Yeah, because
I mean-
you told me if it focuses on
Sorry.
the detective and their lives as
Yeah.
opposed to
Yeah, the way I would classify it is it's all crime based because you can't really tell a police procedural without a crime. You can't really tell a private
could,
detective.
it'd be really
weird.
boring.
A lot of paperwork. And then the detective fiction, it's not always murder, but there's always like it's a crime
Right.
or someone's missing or something. So it's not
but it
necessarily
can be a
crime.
police detective.
Yeah, but that
It
would
doesn't
be
have to be a
police
private
procedural.
detective.
But
And,
I
like,
mean, I'm sure there's
there's,
somebody
like-
out there
there's,
who's
like,
written
Venn
a
diagrams of,
detective
like-
novel, what you would consider a detective novel with a police.
I can name one right now. Columbo. He's a police detective.
His is more. I mean, that's. Well, I don't know. Actually,
Yeah.
Columbo might be a good example.
I think it's a
of
good
that,
example
actually.
because a lot of I think that Harvey Bullock is like treads the line between private investigator and police detective because he does something that private investigators do but police don't often, which is break the rules. Like he'll break into a house and beat someone up for information. That's something you almost always see private detectives doing, but rarely see
Man, I'm glad
police
I didn't go
procedurals.
with my backup pitch for this week, which was Gotham Central.
Yeah,
That would have made things very awkward.
yeah. Anyway, enough of me talking
Then I'd have
about
to choose between two Rucka
detective
books.
fiction.
Well, thankfully, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
So, Cade, what would you like to read this week?
Come back to me.
That's not how this works. You started.
That's not how any of this works.
No, like I want to do Ring of the Nibelung, but it's against Stumptown.
Vote for what you want to read.
I don't know what I want to read yet, so come
Oh
back
my
to me.
god.
Nibelung's been around for like 100-something years. It can wait.
I like the way you guys say it too. It just sounds like Nibelum.
Nibelung. Nibelung.
Ring of the
Nibble,
Nibelung.
nibble, nibble.
Nibelung. I call it.
A glowing recommendation.
Hey, at least I'm not asking you to sit through the 15-hour stage version.
Well, no, you are. You're just making me do it while reading.
It's good. Have you actually read these comics? They're
Yeah.
good. They're good.
They're okay.
They're good. The art's incredible.
They are. Oh yes.
Now I just want to go for it so I can see that, but for an hour.
Yeah. The art is good.
So, Cade,
So entertaining.
what do you want to read?
They said come back to me.
We are
That's not
back
how
to
this
you.
works.
Yeah. Well,
We're
we
back
did.
to you
We,
now.
we went to an
Yeah.
aside where I made fun of Toby, and now we're back.
Whichever one I don't vote for, will it come back?
God, yes.
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. in
Yeah,
theory.
I'll guarantee they both
Okay,
come back.
Stumptown,
There, I'll blow
'cause
two
I
of my
need to
picks.
talk about it.
Yeah.
Kaylee,
5 ghosts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna vote
Ben
for
10, 5 go.
Ben
I'm gonna vote
10?
for Journey into Mystery.
Sweet.
Love me some Kid Loki. Not in that way.
That would
I made
be-
a weird
that would be
sound
wrong.
after you did that too, and it's gonna sound horrible on this episode.
yeah.
So there you go. Why did you have to say that? All right. Whew. So I also enjoy reading about Kid Loki. However, I gotta go with Stumptown, man. I'm like a Stumptown fan.
All right. I was going to vote for Fuse Volume 2. I really enjoyed the first one.
Yeah.
And since it was going to be the closest I could get to crime fiction without reading Stumptown.
Yeah. All right.
So I guess we're reading Stumptown.
Yeah,
Volumes
yeah.
1, 2, and 3.
So excited.
It's gonna be a good time.
Yeah.
I may or may not be here. Just kidding.
Well, some
But I
of
might
us will
not
be
be.
here. So thank you for listening, everybody. Remember, also, in a month,
Yes.
Akira.
Yes, Akira for our
Yep.
next long run.
Yeah. So
All the volumes, which if you're reading the Marvel
is
releases,
7, I think. And if you're reading the new ones, it's 6.
or whoever the newest one is, who published the new one, whoever it was, it's 6 volumes in the
manga.
current
It's
edition
some
that you can
manga
get in
publishing
stores.
company.
There's an old Marvel version, but
Yeah.
that's out of print.
That's
It's-
irrelevant.
That one was
It's
also
old.
in color, which the current one is not.
No, it's not.
So it
But
was,
it was
not in-
originally published in black and white.
right.
So that's the correct way to read it.
Yes.
Okay, that's the one I have. I was like,
Kate
wait.
looked concerned for a moment. The new ones, they're like big phone book versions of it. They look fantastic. They're really great.
'Cause
And
I consulted the internet and I was like, which version should I get? And everybody was saying, get the black and white one. It's the best. So
Yeah.
that's the
I have
one
not.
got.
I have not started reading yet. I plan to start like basically as soon as we finish here. So
yeah, it's
Get-
really
get to
good.
reading.
It reads super fast. So
But
I mean,
you
it's
did
manga.
say you
but-
wanted us to watch the movie.
yeah, watch the
first.
movie first. Which Toby, you've already seen the movie, so
oh yeah, a couple
Yeah.
of times. I saw the
But-
I
old
still have it.
'80s translation that was fucking incomprehensible.
terrible.
And the like 25th or 20th anniversary edition, where
Which-
they retranslated it
Much better.
much better.
Yeah.
Could actually
really?
figure out what was going
Yeah.
on.
Oh, okay.
That was your copy. We watched it together.
Oh, yeah.
And then we sat around for about 15
right.
minutes afterwards talking about it, and we kind of were like, okay, we think this is what happened, and we like figured it out.
Yeah. Totally. sorry.
It was 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was a
Defense.
while ago. Just give me a break.
But yeah, watch the movie, read the book. We'll talk about both on the next long run in a month. Thanks for listening, everybody. I want to go home. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Me From the Gutters. I hope our recommendations have inspired you to go out and find some new comics you'll enjoy. Join us next time for a discussion of our selected title, but like every week, we encourage you to read all of the recommended books. In the meantime, please leave us an iTunes review. It really does help new listeners find the show. You can also like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at ViewFRTHGutters. Feel free to email us at contact@viewfromthegutters.com. Please send us any questions, comments, or recommendations you might have. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as we post new videos every week. And thanks again for listening. And as always, keep reading.